As reported in the news, employers and employees alike are increasingly concerned about the prevalence of attractiveness discrimination at work, leading businesses and governments to wonder what can be done to mitigate any unfair advantages. In a new paper published in the Academy of Management Annals, we explore this attractiveness advantage, which refers to the preferential treatment such as higher salaries and more frequent promotions that the attractive tend to experience at work. Until now, this type of discrimination has been categorized as a form of taste-based discrimination. This means that researchers have generally thought about the attractiveness advantage as an irrational preference for beautiful people, or, more commonly, a bias. In our paper, we explore whether the attractiveness advantage could additionally be categorized as a form of statistical discrimination, which reflects the preferential treatment of a group of people based on the expectation that they will perform better than another group. When such expectations are founded, discrimination is generally considered meritocratic. For example, if an employer believes that intelligence is correlated with expected performance, the employer is free to discriminate on the basis of intelligence tests. Therefore, in this paper, we explore whether the attractive possess greater work-relevant characteristics, things like greater intelligence, more developed social skills, or better mental and physical health, that could potentially justify decision-makers' preferential treatment of these people. We then look at how decision-makers treat attractive versus unattractive individuals in general, and see if these results converge with what we learned about the differences in these work-related characteristics that the unattractive and the attractive have, and how this treatment changes according to the context in which these decisions are made. We first looked at correlations between individuals' attractiveness and different characteristics that reflect human and social capital, so things like sociability, intelligence, health, popularity, and extroversion. Human and social capital are known to be advantageous at work, so our thinking was that if the attractive are more likely to have higher human or social capital, they may be treated preferentially because they are expected to perform better due to this greater capital. What we find is that the attractive, on average, seem to have a small but notable advantage in the amount of social capital they possess, so things like social skills and popularity, but a negligible advantage in the amount of human capital they possess. Specifically, we observed the correlation between physical attractiveness and human capital to be R equal to 0.05, and the correlation between attractiveness and social capital to be R equal to 0.21, which is comparable to the positive correlation between socioeconomic status and social capital. This means that the capital differences between the attractive and the unattractive likely contribute to generating social advantages, comparable to how supply-side differences are believed to be a major driver of inequality reproduction as a function of social class differences. And what this tells us is that these differences in social resources may be one reason for the preferential treatment that the attractive experience at work, which opens the door to the possibility that the attractiveness advantage may reflect not only taste-based discrimination, but might also reflect statistical discrimination, in which individuals give preference to some people because they expect them to perform better than others. We then turn to the question of whether potential knowledge or assumptions about higher performance may explain why decision-makers treat the attractive more favorably. We looked at experimental data from the past 50 years and found that the effect size of the difference between the treatment of the attractive and the unattractive in work contexts is equal to D equal to 0.34, which reflects a small to medium-sized effect of attractiveness on work outcomes. While the attractive are generally treated more favorably in work contexts than the unattractive, decision-makers seem to be driven by motivations to select the most competent person for the job. For example, the effect of attractiveness decreased when the candidate was considered unfit for the job, such as when women were considered for construction jobs, or when decision-makers were given information on candidates' academic achievements or past work experience. We do want to emphasize that the majority of studies in this body of work has used decontextualized designs, whereby they expose participants to candidates' resumes, which include pictures of each candidate, and then ask participants to choose a candidate to, for example, hire or promote. Given these designs, it is not surprising that past research has focused on a taste-based discrimination explanation, because attractiveness is the only variable that was manipulated. However, these researchers did not take into account the expectations of candidates' social capital participants may have inferred from the given photos, therefore leaving open the possibility that participants' preference for the attractive was due not to taste, but to greater expected performance from these candidates. Together, these results suggested to us that decision makers do tend to treat the attractive more favorably than the unattractive, but that they do so in ways that seem to suggest that the motivating factor behind this favorable treatment is a belief that the attractive possess qualities that make them better fit for the workplace. And if you think back to our supply-side investigation, the fact that the attractive seem to possess greater social capital is likely to affect the stereotypes that people hold of the attractive. Therefore, when individuals are asked to make decisions comparing attractive and unattractive individuals, they may use their personal experiences to help their decision-making. To be clear, what we are not saying is that discrimination based on appearance is right, desirable, or justified. But what we are saying is that organizational research thinks of attractiveness discrimination as predominantly taste-based, but it may also reflect, to some extent, statistical discrimination. And, at the moment, the methods used in past research don't allow us to definitively say that the attractiveness advantage only represents taste-based discrimination, and actually gives some evidence that statistical discrimination plays a role too. So right now, the trend to implement policies to address attractiveness discrimination may not take into consideration whether and under what circumstances the attractive may bring more value to the workplace, or how the attractiveness advantage may be more similar to discrimination based on, say, age or IQ than race or gender. So if the next time you look around at work you're pleased by what you see, maybe take a moment to think about why these capital differences between the more and less attractive may emerge, if the processes that lead to these differences should be considered fair or unfair, and whether these same processes may be responsible for other types of discrimination we see at work and in the world. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to reach out with any questions or comments.